Hilary Leong is a dedicated humanitarian and advocate for children and women affected by human trafficking and gender-based violence and femicide. She was raised in a family of anti-apartheid activists, wherein Hilary has then had that conviction for her commitment towards social justice at a young age sparked. She is currently the co-founder and chairperson, as well as the CEO of Awareness for Child Trafficking Africa, which I gave you the abbreviation of, which I said ACT Africa, an organization focused on the combating human trafficking. And Hilary has held leadership roles in various initiatives, including the Karabo Mokoena Foundation, which was focused on gender-based violence and femicide, and the Hadasha Treatment Center for Women. She is also a master in LLP life coaching, where she does facilitations of life coaching sessions and she does motivational speaking. And in her fulfillment of director at the Maximum Foundation, she has been able to make strides and positive contributions in that aspect. Hilary has been recognized globally, including being a finalist for the Global Women Inspirational Award, which she was awarded in the year 2022. Her life's work is rooted in a deep passion for helping those in need. And indeed, this phenomenal woman has been doing all this amazing work. You're more than welcome to start your presentation.
Yes, good morning, everyone. With regards to, I'm not going to have a formal slideshow or anything of that sort. So I'm going to speak you through what human trafficking is, which I'm sure everybody, the act, the means, and the purpose, how it is done, why it is done, and what's the purpose for which it is done, which is exploitation. We know that how is trafficking done and the means. So various modes of transport, whether it be through road, rail, it can be online as well. Various ways in which the trafficker would, and obviously the means, threat, force, fraud, coercion, and those deception, lies, promises of false jobs. So that's in a nutshell what you're looking at in terms of what human trafficking is. And it is a business, and that business is there done through exploitation of people in order for your perpetrators to be enriched in one way or the other, whether it be through material, actual things like cars, houses, or whatever, and including financial gain, and everything, the basis of it is exploitation to the nth degree. So that is what human trafficking is. So all three of those facets, the act, the means, and the purpose, when it comes to anybody over the age of 18 in South Africa, because then you are deemed to be an adult, has to be satisfied in order for your various entities which do interviews on possible victims of trafficking, like your Department of Social Development, your law enforcement that is involved, to basically then determine, is this a victim of trafficking or not. When it comes to child trafficking, the act and the means, the first two is what is needed to determine whether a child is a victim of trafficking or not. Then thirdly, when it comes to I raised this yesterday. I was a speaker at the airports company, because it was International Day Against Corruption. So we were very blessed and privileged to have been the CSO that was invited to be a partner to the airport, and to basically speak on these topics, which involves corruption, which involves, well, we know with cases, we know with human trafficking, there's always an element of corruption. You're working with syndicates. It is an organized crime. It is a complex form of gender-based violence. Why? You are perpetrating when a victim is sourced or recruited, it is shopping. It's based on a shopping list. So it's either they want a male or they want a female, and it has to look, and these are the criteria of what they want. And that is how they then go shopping for the, hold on one second. pardon me, how they would then go about recruiting the next person, that they are going to be putting on the market, and, that will be being bought and sold. So yes, you are a commodity. It is a business. There's no emotion in human trafficking, and that's what makes it so dangerous as well. When you mess with people's money, remember, it's greed involved here, and they exploiting people's vulnerabilities because of whatever the desperation is, whether it's poverty, whether it's emotional, whether it is mental, whether it is material, whatever that vulnerability is that is shown through whatever the desperation is, it will be exploited by predators out there. And that's the bottom line. And that exploitation, the aim of that exploitation is to make money. And that's the bottom line. So your syndicates, there's not one person or two persons. When you are three or more people, it is a syndicate. So the minute there are three people involved in anything that's planning, it is a syndicate criminal. So syndicates move around, syndicates change, victims change hands of traffickers all the time. And that is why it is so difficult when it comes to investigations, and it makes it a very complex and hidden crime. It is often not visible on the onset and just immediately that this is a situation of trafficking. So often you have gender-based violence cases. You have rape cases that come in. You have cases, just this morning I was reading an article, 2013, there were two boys that were killed in Soweto, two young boys, and it was a granny and a boyfriend, and it was for the purposes of muti. So a lot of that does happen here in South Africa. Kids get killed for the purposes of witchcraft, rituals, muti, in fact, the whole of Africa. That is a problem here. But the problem comes in your charge sheet. So they're acknowledging that this is a case of being muti. But now you've got a charge of organ harvesting, organ trafficking, because now your organs, the person himself may be killed and may not have been trafficked. That person is not, but their organs sure have. So that organ makes up that person. So the organs have been taken, they've been killed for the organs, and those organs are sold to whoever it is that they've sold it to, and for whatever reason. So your organ harvesting, your organ trafficking has taken place. So we find in our judicial system, in our legal system, that is often neglected on your charge sheets. So you will put there, I don't know if organ harvesting is on the charge sheet, but it sure does say murdered for the purposes of muti. So one step ahead, that is something that we are raising as civil society organizations. Now, ACT Africa sits on the task team, provincial task team for trafficking in persons for the province as well. So those are issues that we bring about, and in that task team, it's not just civil society organizations, it's elect civil society organizations and various government departments that sit on the task team, which obviously contribute towards the fight against, trafficking in persons. And obviously, whatever is done there is reported to your national teams and taken, so that those reports go further, and it actually then even goes as far abroad as your US state trafficking in persons body, which oversees globally, and for it is the USA, what is happening in terms of trafficking in persons. And then annually you would have the TIP report, which comes out, which basically then provides you with the status of each country, what is happening, and at what tier level they are on. Now, I don't know, does anybody understand, or have you heard about tier levels and things like that? And just to are people allowed to interact in Tombi? Yeah, so I just want to basically understand. Do you understand, has anybody heard of the various tier levels with regards to human trafficking? You can just maybe If you have, just raise your hand and then put it down again. You don't need to talk. I understand everyone isn't, yeah. But you know what I neglected to do before I started on this whole thing? So just to introduce myself, Ntombi, I'm not sure what you said about me before that and the organization, but I take it you basically gave them a spiel. So I am the co-founder and of ACT Africa. I'm also the chairperson and CEO. So I'm also a life coach and I'm an inspirational and motivational speaker. So I often use my life coaching in situations where we encounter victims, especially of GBV, to basically coach them to a point. And even at times we meet victims of trafficking, they don't even realize that they are victims of trafficking and only want to speak to them. And then they get quite scared to take it to the next step, which is basically the law enforcement angle, and as well as getting counseling. So you have those people that are walking around that are victims of trafficking or have been, and are victims even online. Online trafficking is a big thing. So that's where I know I normally on the outside would charge for my sessions and things like that. But when it comes to the victims when I meet, it's automatic that you would use your coaching to coach them to a level of getting to the point of now taking the next step to reporting the matter and getting the necessary counseling. So you've got to get them over the fear factor level, because fear is a major factor, because we know syndicates are dangerous. They come for you and there's no playing games. That's the one thing they're not playing about. When they're coming after you, they are, and they will kill you. And that's the bottom line. So, okay, no one has basically said anything of whether or not I'm going to go ahead with regards to the tier levels. So your tier level breakdown tells you at what level your country is in, right? Whether it's good, bad, meeting the criteria, not yet there, or whatever the case may be. Certain countries, they aren't basically couldn't get information of, but there are very few like that. Thank God, South Africa, as per this year, was upped to tier level 2. So for 2 years, we were downgraded to the tier 2 watch list. Tier 2 watch list means you're not there, you're not doing what you do, and if you downgrade it, which impacts on investments coming into the country. So it impacts, it's not just a matter of tiering you, this is where you're at and that's it. If that was the case, it would be insignificant to even have something. Those gradings affect the economy of the country, what is happening, and potential investments, not just for investment into the economy, but also investments into your civil society organizations, because it means work is not being done. It means you're not meeting the standards that are set there, which has been, if you look at the Palermo protocol that was it 2013? I stand corrected, I never remember that date correctly, which was adopted by various nations and ratified, South Africa being one of them, and that is why we have our PACOTA, which is prevention and combating of trafficking in persons, and our laws which combat trafficking. Through that, then there wouldn't have been a need for any of that. So it is very, very essential when that report goes out. It reflects the true status of what is happening in the country. So for us, it is hard work all the time, and especially it being a very difficult, complex crime that you're busy with, it is difficult. So South Africa, thank God, otherwise we would have been on tier level 3 if things did not change. And we've been working very hard along with various government bodies, along with other civil society organizations. Collectively, you cannot work in a silo. Unfortunately, fortunately, I would say that because of it being so, to combat that big monster, there's no way you can work in a silo. You've got to take hands and collaborate and work together to basically chew off bit by bit, and get some kind of improvement. So we know that things are pretty bad. South Africa is a transit source and destination. Africa, different parts is basically on the whole, and different parts are more transit, other parts is more destination, and other parts are more in terms of where they are victims are being taken out of the country, like your East Africans and things like that. So, and your different prevalence in different parts. So the upper part of Africa is your prevalence is forced labor and sex trafficking, and of course organ harvesting and that kind of thing. You get to the bottom part, which is your southern part of Africa, it's the reverse. It is sex trafficking, then labor trafficking, and of course you have your organ harvesting that goes. Then the newest thing is scamming. So we know that South Africans are being targeted, especially in countries like Indonesia, those kind of countries, where they are promised jobs. You go over there and you think you're going into some job that's could be something like a call center or teaching or whatever, and you end up being forced to scam people. And South Africans are targeted. Another place where South Africans are targeted, unfortunately now, is Israel. Where you targeted into areas, certain areas are not as volatile as certain areas in Israel, but yes, in those regions, being to go in there and other areas in Africa as well. And you end up going in there and you are working as, um, you know, a person in somebody's house, etc. It's what you call domestic servitude. So that's one of the things that's taking place as well. So yes, the targets are great, and of course, sex trafficking is a big thing as well. So those are things that have been picked up on. And then right here in Africa, where South African women are targeted, with the Congolese, the civil war in Congo that's taking place. Girls have been taken across and they end up being with the soldiers in those war-torn regions, and they are being sold to the soldiers for purposes of sex. So this is what we are faced with here. Our children, there's a lot of inter-provincial, inter-community trafficking that's taking place, and a lot of it is sex trafficking. We're finding a lot of people coming into the country, particularly boys and men. We see the situation of zamazamas, which we've been talking about for the longest time since it was actually realized. So we know zamazama issue is prevalent right across Africa, where there are mines. And we know South Africa is rich in minerals, resources, the whole of Africa. So we sit with issues like Ghana, for example, the gold. They are full of zamazamas. Nigeria, certain other parts of Africa where there's mining, South Africa. So we've highlighted this. So the strange thing is, we've highlighted our zamazama issue and we're trying to tackle it. Those countries are not. I haven't heard of anything. If there are, it's on a low scale. It's just getting on. I've had reports in Ghana to assist on Lake Volta because there are kids that are being used for fishing and different things in those boats, not just the fishing industry. And parents are allowing it because it's putting bread on the table, and these people go there and buy groceries and food and etc. for those people in exchange. So these people are not seeing anything basically wrong with it. So this is the kind of thing, it's a difficult thing, and that is where a lot of child labor is taking place, child soldiers, and then students, people trying to put bread on the table are selling their organs, thinking that, yes, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z for my kidney, my liver, or whatever it is that I can give, and I will be taken care of. My liver can regenerate, which is not always the case. And these people are left not with the money that they are promised. And if they are given some money or whatever money, it's they have to spend it on medical help, because they are left to actually no medical assistance because they've got what they want. So there you are, you left, and many die, and obviously sitting with lifelong problems are following their organs being removed. And then you have the issues of rituals, moti, witchcraft, which is very, very prevalent in Africa. So this is what your face of human trafficking looks like in a nutshell. Yes, South Africa is doing a lot of work. Like I said, on the tier levels, 3 is your worst. 2 is where we're at. We're nearly there, but we're getting there. We're not quite there. 1 is great. There's not one country in Africa. Namibia was the only one at some stage that was on 1. No more. No more. So even them. So some countries have moved up to tier 2. We can see that in the fight against, but it hovers between anything from tier 2 watch list and tier 3. That's what's happening in Africa. So of your trafficking, so you know you have your stats that people always talk about 150 billion people, and that's stats that's going on since before 2015. Post-COVID, the situation has worsened, and as the economics worldwide has declined, the socio-economic situation has declined, so this has declined. So as long as you can have a decline in that kind of thing, you are going to have exploitation increasing because people are fighting to put food on the table. They're fighting to survive. So they get involved in these acts where perpetrators then lure people into becoming perpetrators as well, promising them once-off things, and then it ends up being they find out they're caught in something that they don't want to be, and now they are forced to carry on with these criminal acts. So that's also a form of trafficking. Children being trafficked, gangsterism, children being forced to carry out acts of criminal activities. Because of in South Africa, under the age of 10, you cannot be criminalized. You have to undergo psychosocial sessions, etc., and address those kind of things. So that, quite correctly so, because it's a problem when a child is in a situation like that. You got to look at why. But now your criminal actor in it has seen the loophole and luring these children, and so they realize all you're going to go for is this, so you carry out. So the kids are taking the rap. Now remember, once it doesn't just leave there that this child is a psychosocial thing. Once a mark like that is on you, it is on you for life. Right? Because it is seen, it is in the community, and that is the unfortunate thing. And this is the sad, bleak picture that is here. You know, you try and look for the ups. Yes, we are fighting. There are definitely a lot of ups because people are being more aware. You hear more about human trafficking. You hear more of it on the news. You hear more about how people are being arrested and the sentences that are being carried out and things like that. So that's a good thing, but it is not enough. And then again, you have an issue of, I mentioned yesterday, I was on Newsroom at the issue of capacity, the issue of resources. So what the demand is, what's coming in versus your capacity and versus your resources, the scales are not balanced. The resources and capacity that's needed is so much less that we have compared to the need out there that we've got to combat. So your smuggling, we see a lot. I'm going to switch over to smuggling, and I deliberately just focused on trafficking now, so you can understand what human trafficking is. Threat, force, fraud, deception, luring. And when you're coming into a country, you do not even know that you're crossing that border to be trafficked. You think you're going there for better part unless you've been abducted. And most times it's children that are abducted. Abductions do happen. Sometimes kidnappings land up in trafficking, but most times not. Kidnapping is often ransom, and there's something that's gone wrong somewhere. You've been targeted for that, businessmen, etc. So never people seem to think kidnapping is synonymous with human trafficking, and it is not. Very, very, very small amount of kidnapping is trafficking. Abduction, especially of whether it's especially of children, teenagers. If your golden hour is 12 hours to 24, after that, the longer it takes, the less chance of you finding that child. Syndicates move very, very fast. And you cannot, if it is not for reasons of that the child's abducted, from a parent because there's custody issues, or somebody wants a baby and is a bit psycho, and or a pedophiles that aren't that for their own purposes, and things like that, abduction in those kind of things, then outside of that you cannot exclude human trafficking at all. Because you must know there's various reasons that that child could be now abducted if all of those reasons have been wiped out. Yes, there are pedophiles that do engage in human trafficking because they sell the pictures and stuff that they take. And they, remember, pedophiles talk to each other. So they know where to look. And especially if you go onto the dark web is prevalent. They know, they share these things. So that is where your element of trafficking comes in. So online trafficking, that's your one aspect, aside being you and me chatting like this, and somebody, you think this person is your friend or your age or whatever, and then somebody takes on, it's an adult who's taken on the picture of somebody else. So you need to be so careful of what you post out there. If I can give you a tip, when you post a picture of yourself like this, like your ID picture is this, it's very easy for them to take your picture and then place it somewhere else. But if you place a picture where you're looking down slightly, or there's some action, or your hand is in the face, or something where your full face is not square like this, then yes, you can post. And obviously I urge people, please don't post your children. If you're going to post anything about your children, blur their faces, blur them. School uniforms, things like that, please don't, with their name tags and things, don't post it. They get to know where these children are. Unfortunately, that's what we're, especially first day of school things. I am going to this school now with my child. There's a predator that is watching. So as much as this seems like a very negative thing, but it is out there for your safety. These are safety precautions that, and of course your passwords that you need to have between you and your children. If somebody comes and fetch them at school, that there is a password that only you and that child has. And if that password is not provided, that child cannot leave the school. So it's very important, please, that you guys have this in place. And I can go on forever about that. Travel tips and things which I did yesterday at the airport, which you've got to be vigilant of. Don't put yourselves in danger in terms of going and approaching. You rather go to the authorities, your cabin crew, etc. WhatsApp somebody out there if you're able to on the plane. Access your WhatsApp at that stage. Other than that, you immediately you get off the plane, alert somebody that something is suspicious in the plane without them realizing, because you will be putting yourself in danger, as also making it worse for the possible victim. So please be very vigilant, be alert, be safe out there. Now, we know, as I said, with trafficking, when you go crossing a border, you're going there with your own papers. So you're crossing a border not realizing you're going to meet your demise wherever you're going to. You are being trafficked, right? Now, smuggling is the other way. You know you're being smuggled. You agree to being smuggled, and you are paying an amount of money to be smuggled across a border, and you don't have the relevant papers. So they smuggle you, there's no papers because you're going to get new documents, or supposed to be getting new documents in the country that you're going to. New documents would obviously be falsified documents. And that is where smuggling comes in. And now where people are sometimes stuck between smuggling and trafficking. So we do find perpetrators saying to people, we'll smuggle them across the country, quite rightly so, so you know you are being smuggled across the country because now there's a job. Now we're talking about the minors here. When you get here, so now you need to pay money to whoever needs to collect you because the smuggler wants their money. Monies aren't paid, problems come in. Anybody that is undocumented is already vulnerable to predators out there. Whether it is human trafficking or not, you are vulnerable because you have no papers. So you have your problem now that comes in where illegal documents start happening, your corruption starts taking place. So that's your one factor already that's a problem you have to watch out for. The other thing here is now, this person could now become a potential victim of trafficking because from here onwards, you now are, especially when monies haven't been received by the smuggler, they could easily let you and say, right, somebody comes along and it ends up in a trafficking situation. So that is now, you find here with the Zama thing, they came in, they knew they were smuggled into the country. Some of them were trafficked. They didn't know they were coming in as to working mines. They were promised other things, ended up working the mines. Others came in, they were smuggled. Knowingly, they're coming in here. And then they get here and they said, right, once you smuggled, this is it. Now we have a job for you. You're going to do this job. And this is what it is. Oh, all think it's all going to be rosy and whoops. Yeah, we sit with a situation that we're seeing in the country right now. And we can see that there are children that have been brought in as well. So a lot of it in our rural country, I said the other day, also on an interview, our rural kids, families are very much impacted by this. And awareness and education is key for them to realize what the implications are of their decisions in allowing their children to be either smuggled or going along with somebody that says, look, I will take your 15-year-old son or daughter, whatever, across. There is this opportunity for them. And they do, and they go ahead, and everything looks rosy, and the next thing there's problems. And the same goes for the smuggling. You find a lot of smuggling just on Saturday, the Labobo border from Mozambique. About 14 were smuggled into the country. There was a taxi driver that was arrested for it. So people are desperate because there's political unrest and upheaval happening in Mozambique. So they're coming over here. Families will rather have their children and their families coming to SA than go back home to Mozambique because of the situation. So this is what we are sitting with. So it is a huge problem. It is a big problem, and not just here in South Africa. South Africa is vocal. Please note, it's happening across Africa. It is happening. It's happening even from Africa into countries like Italy, those Mediterranean countries especially. Coming from East Africa, they are leaving on boats. Predators are luring people and they're going in on boats and stuff, and they are being exploited. So places like Italy, all those port countries along the Mediterranean coastline, all of there, where they think they're going into havens of exploitation is taking place. So please do not forever think that this is just unique to South Africa. It is not. It is not unique. It is happening right across Africa and, like I said, into our European countries as well. So South America's the same thing. Zamas, it's happening. So on that vein, I'm not going to speak much about statistics and things, because your statistics are quite systemic in that you don't have proper statistics. But from what you do have, and the reason why you don't, lots is unreported, lots is undetected when cases come in. So, and there's not a proper system in place, in fact, globally, where people are, unlike other crimes, because it is so difficult to determine. So it is humongous. The situation is bad. Now, how you can tell that we are sitting with a pandemic situation globally is by the amount of money that is being said that traffickers, it is in the criminal, it is the second biggest income earner globally in terms of crimes bringing in money, right? So 2011, around then, we were sitting on 150 billion. People kept using that amount of money. We're sitting currently post-COVID close to in excess of 240 trillion. That's what money comes from human trafficking. Now, if it's a second highest income earner and you're sitting with that large amount of money, how can you not say that we're sitting with a huge problem? And if you're going to call it a pandemic, then I think it is a word that is used quite aptly because the amount of money. If it was making no money, then why would we even be fighting it? Because it wouldn't be an issue. It's the second largest income earner. So what does that tell you? It's something that we cannot just like water on a duck's back, brush it off, ignore it. It is affecting. It is affecting not just a matter of your family life, your communities, your children's lives. It is affecting our economies. It is affecting your back pocket. It is affecting what's happening in your corporate space, your employees sitting in that desk. It is affecting your child at school. It is affecting your child's future in where they're going to be. Because why? We are sitting with dysfunction. Dysfunction as a result of abuse, as a result of being exploited, as a result of corruption. This is the picture. It is a stark picture. I cannot give you something that's all bright and cheery when it is not. Are there people working? Yes, definitely. Are there results? Yes, definitely. But like I said before, the results are showing, but the problem outweighs the result. On that note, are there any further questions?
Sure. I think, yes, as you say, the reality of everything that is happening in and around us, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, it is prevalent. And us being quiet about it won't make a difference. And because of how economically viable it is, it makes it even that great of a challenge because you're going against people that are financially powerful and they are able to get things done because money, to a certain extent, speaks. And so when you are advocating for areas like that, you are advocating for Hilary. I think you need to understand fully if you are called into this area of advocacy because it is not um, rosy, as you say. So it is a particular challenge from documentation, whether you have it or not. At the end of the day, it is a primary challenge. And I think, as you say, we should be very careful of how we post our pictures. And as somebody who is a very lover of selfies, I think I'm going to relook at my social media pages and just reevaluate my pictures again, just so that I
Yeah,
apply a
add
measure of
something.
safety.
Just so that it's not easily taken and replaced and
Yes.
onto some AI figure or something out there that to basically exploit and things like that. And look, even for us I mean, it is many people, even yesterday at the airport, the information I gave of the amount of people who had security, everything come and was like, wow. So I was a bit like, you at the airport, one just takes for granted that these people would be knowledgeable of things and stuff that should be happening. But yeah, and it's very dangerous as well for somebody like me because our organization, you're disrupting the flow of money. You're disrupting somebody's business, and nobody wants their business disrupted. So yeah, and you are always, so you have to be, I have to say, you have to be prayed up. You have to pray because you have to trust your gut a lot because often you are duped into, people will even invite you to events and the only reason why they're inviting you to their event is for your demise and you think it's something. So I do not just accept everything. We check and recheck am I going some, and especially if it's not something like, why are you inviting me? What's the reason? A simple thing like if I go somebody and eating food and things like that, you have to be careful. Somebody could come there and decide, I want to poison Hilary because she is just being a bit too vocal. She is disrupting too much. So that person comes as an angel in disguise. So there's so much um, you know, that us as organizations have to be very careful of. Look, we do awareness and education, we do training, we do self-defense workshops, we have orphanages, our kids in our orphanages that have gone through these things of gender-based violence and human trafficking and being abandoned. Our kids, we've got like orphanages, Durban, Gauteng, different parts of Africa that we and we use this as a vetting tool. So we vet because they use these orphanages as well to basically exploit children. So when we go in there, we can pick up what's happening, and obviously if things are not looking good, we report it. But obviously we don't go in there and tell them that's what we're doing. We go in there to support, to give food relief, to give assist with whatever as obviously funding allows us that we receive or sponsorships. And that's what we do. And that's part of our vetting. It's our Orphanage Africa program. And then, yeah, there's lots, like I said, our disasters. So everything that is preventative and to break the cycles of human trafficking and gender-based violence, we will do. And we will outline, which I'm sure if you go onto our website, you can see, and including the fact, I don't know if Ntombi told you, we just created a game changer, which is a board game, which works on changing negative narratives through the negative norms in terms of mindsets on the way you think and act, so that you start thinking differently and start acting differently in a more positive way, where gender things like gender-based violence, or you getting into possible situations which could lead to human trafficking, is minimized. So it changes that narrative. It flips the coin. Instead of me telling you stop this, it gets you to start thinking differently, so that you start acting differently whilst you are educated about the subject of gender-based violence, etc., and human trafficking. Yeah.
Uh, Thank you, Hilary. No, I had not gone into the details of the game because
Oh.
I love hearing you talk about it. But we have a hand from Damien Etone, and I think you could just
Yes.
unmute yourself, Damien, please.
Thank you very much, Hilary. It was really good to really hear you go into the nature of human trafficking in South Africa and the impact
Yes.
on life and the various ways it manifests itself. It's a really major issue, and as you noted, that spans across different countries and manifests in particular ways within Africa. One of the things I probably more of a comment than a question, but something that I would really like to hear you say more about and how you've seen it in your work is this area where you have the victims of trafficking themselves who may be in violation of laws, immigration laws, and how that is kind of handled in the context of South Africa and what you've seen in your work, because while they might be in violation of law, they're still victims in a sense, and how that is navigated can really be an important aspect of addressing the problem.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because we find that a lot. So, especially in your Zama Zama situation. So, these people are arrested. So, years ago, could be about 3 years ago, there was a situation where our counselors, law enforcement embarked on a certain site, and so we raised the fact and said, please note that some of these people are possibly victims of trafficking. And you must know, once you realize that somebody is a victim of trafficking, you cannot criminalize them because they are being forced to do what they want to do. But now it's the determining factor. And the only way that that's going to be determined, like I said, is through them interviewing that person, or once they've told the story. So the initial thing, what they should do and that obviously we know the answer, they're going to be taken in. You're going to be arrested because you're sitting with volumes in a situation like that. But once they're taken in, the interviews must happen. And based on those interviews that are taken, they then determine whether this is a victim or not, right? And that's how it is determined. Now you do have victims that's not Zama related. I actually, now that you're talking, a few days ago I had a situation, a victim of sex trafficking, a young girl. She was sold from Zimbabwe to a person here in South Africa. She was trafficked in Zimbabwe, had already been abused by her stepfather, sold her to an old man that on crossing the borders here into South Africa. She then, anyway, bottom short, she's over 18 now. She's in her early 20s, and through all the abuse, because somebody tried to help her, said they're helping her, but ended up also taking advantage of her, etc. So her life story is there's actually a documentary that ENCA has done on it as well. But what happened to her the past weekend, she has absolutely no papers. So here's a failing of the law. When this case was happened, and I actually expressed it to the law enforcement, and I said to them, you guys have failed this girl. She still has no paper. So what you should have done, realizing that this is a case when we were notified, you guys had to get social development in, and automatically Department of International Relations and Cooperation had to step in and get the embassy involved here, because this girl's got no papers. So, right, she should have by then received a certificate saying that she is a victim of trafficking, and she could have produced that certificate in the interim if she had. But now she sits with no papers. This case is, and that's why I say capacity and resources is a huge problem. Things are falling through the cracks. So this girl called me and said to me, I am in trouble. They're about to arrest me because I have no papers. And I'm like, she says, Hilary, you're the only one that can help. In fact, she called the producer of ENCA, and ENCA said, contact Hilary to assist you. So what I immediately did was I got onto, went straight to, obviously, law enforcement who was dealing with it, and I said, please, you need to assist. Yeah, there's no ways these police are going to listen to me and tell me not to release her. It has to come from law enforcement and has to state that she is a victim of trafficking. And needless to say, they let her go, but a bribe had to be paid. Somebody had to pay a bribe. So that is a case now again. So they have to sort that out. So you see, this is the situation. That's not the only one person that we're sitting with. So victims of trafficking, she has transgressed. She hasn't transgressed, but transgressed the law by not having documents in that moment, because that person doesn't know she's a victim of trafficking. So she's transgressed the law. Now they want to arrest her. And on top of it, they've now transgressed her. But many victims have been arrested. And because of the cracks in the system, and in some cases where they haven't got there, or now they haven't been in the process of repatriation, because that's ideally what should have been happening, provided where they're going back to is suitable and safe for them to go back to, because they're undocumented. And in that case, if it is unsuitable and stays unsafe, then our Department of Home Affairs, together with the Department of your immigration, and everybody has to come together, decide the next best thing, because obviously this person needs to be issued with papers in the relevant country so that they are there. And the big thing is that victim of trafficking country, you are going either way, like it or not, and then not. Checks have to be done that where they're going to, where they are going to be received, they are not going to be exploited again. So it has to be a very safe environment. But if not, so that is what the standard operating procedure is here in South Africa. Yes, it is being followed. Yes, things are falling through the cracks, as I have just explained. And yeah, so this is the situation we are at. I hope that answered your question, Damien.
Very much, thank you.
You're most
Yes.
welcome.
I would like to state our gratitude to Hilary for coming in and presenting thought-provoking standing points that we should be placing in our day-to-day life. so that not just awareness is raised, but that we are very aware of our environment, as well as some of the activities that we participate in. And as you highlight rightfully, I think even for myself, I think even for our mentees who are now mentors, we've had incidents where we do receive invitations. And so we place a lot of consideration in terms of how do we navigate these issues and verifying if this is legit or not. And so with that said, I would like to request those that are in the room, if you have questions, to please drop them in the chat, and we would have Hilary just respond to them adequately. At the current moment, we're running a bit behind on our schedule. As I would like to say, Hilary, as always, I think I appreciate your time, your efforts, as well as the advocacy work that you guys do. I think we need to just forge ahead and educate the younger generation coming in as well, so that they don't become, victims of circumstance. And that's why it is critical to always have ACT Africa stating or making a statement in some of the sessions we have, because we also realize that it is as simple as making a fundamental life choice that you could find yourself in hot water, and not knowing who to call and not knowing where to go becomes then your primary challenge. So we raise awareness continuously. We always appreciate ACT Africa's work, and we continue to share the work that you guys do, and we will elaborate on these. There is a podcast session that we had with Hilary where she went into detail about the game that she was making reference of, where she was highlighting the importance of educating and raising awareness, not just at the primary level, which is with schools, but also with amongst ourselves as adults, where you can start to realize the fundamental aspects of gender-based violence and femicide, and what you should be understanding, or importantly, how you should be educating your children. Edutainment is a fundamental way to engage with your children and raise those fundamental issues. So from ourselves, we say thank you so much for the presentation. We will continue to be engaged with you. Should anybody just raise a question or have any recommendation or a statement, please jot it in the chat box. We'll ensure that Hilary does receive it, and we will make sure that her contact details, well, the ones that are publicly known, are available on our conference, so you can engage with her if you have any other questions. And with that said, Hilary, God bless, and we really always just thank you for your time.
Very much. God bless to all of you, and have a very Merry Christmas, and yes, to a very blessed, safe, and prosperous 2025 for everyone. God bless. Thank you so much.